Ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba. Welcome to episode 53 of Everything Teams Phone Live. I get so excited, Brandon, when I hit that go live button. It right in the palm of your hands. It gives you the ability to stream your message worldwide. We're broadcasting worldwide today on LinkedIn. We have a special guest today, Brandon. In fact, I always do the intro, Brandon. I think this time you should do the intro because I feel like from a technical level perspective, you guys are simpatico. You should probably do the intro.
Well, we're
There you
we're
go.
about to find out. We are about to find out, and yes, we are live. Other than your camera is locked up again, so there's aspects that maybe don't want to be live today, and that's maybe your picture. But yes, joining us today is a Microsoft legend, Daryl Hunter. Welcome to the show.
Hi, friends.
Well, I guess we're gonna find out how much we geek out together on this call. In fact, this is our first time meeting. You know, kind of in a live setting, so it's going to be fun. We've chatted off on the side obviously before this podcast, so it's going to be really fun to kind of start getting into the weeds and seeing like how well we gel together.
We did build this as the how-to show, and I think what's interesting is that we get the opportunity to really have a technical discussion. For those of you listening out there, you get the opportunity to have a technical discussion really about some of the new things that have come out with Microsoft Teams, right? Some of the stuff it's difficult to keep up with when if maybe you're in an organization managing the Teams platform and the features just come out so fast and furious, or if you're thinking about Microsoft Teams in your organization, this is a particularly interesting show because some new things like frontline workers and shared calling and things like that are coming up to the top, where we can talk about what that looks like in an organization and why you would deploy it, why it actually means something to you, or maybe not. We can kind of dive in and show you. This is the how-to episode of all things Microsoft Teams. So, Daryl, welcome to the show, Daryl.
Hi there. Hi, friends. Good to be here.
There we go. Excellent. Look, I see there's a piano, a fellow strummer back there, a string guitar stuff. You got is it a mandolin back there?
Yeah, I got a mandolin back here. I've only had that one, I don't know, a year or so. I'm still learning how to play that. This guitar I've had about 25 years. This ukulele I've had for a couple years now. And this, if you're not familiar with a dulcimer is like a mountain music instrument, like a folk music or maybe Irish music, bluegrass. I live in Louisville, Kentucky. I listen to bluegrass. I love bluegrass. I play bluegrass. I live in the bluegrass state.
Okay, there you go. I'm a country fan. I like old 80s, 90s country music. So it's but that's pretty cool. That's amazing. That's a great collection. The ukulele, that's pretty interesting. I've not had a chance to play a ukulele. How much do you like hanging on to that thing? Because I feel like you can just walk it outside, walk it around, just kind of, it's super mobile.
Yeah, this one's fun. This is a tenor uke. So they make them look even smaller. They make like a concert that's smaller and a soprano that's even smaller, but I like the sound. It's got like a unique sound to it, It's just kind of like calming and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I use it a lot when my head gets stuck. Get a chance to unstick.
That's exactly what it does for.
Question for you, Daryl. I don't know if you've seen Rick's Microsoft Teams song that he's blasted out for the world to listen to. Do you have a Microsoft song? That's the real question.
I know we're live and I'm afraid to say it out loud, but sometimes the song kind of goes like, ah, and that's like it. So
that's more of a metal song. It's more of a metal song. I love it. That's fantastic. All right. Well, Daryl, why do you, if you don't mind, what do you do at Microsoft? And I think it'd be great for the people out there to understand what it is you do. What is your role at Microsoft? And we can kind of dive into where we think this call is going.
That sounds good. Hey, so friends, my name is Daryl Hunter. You can call me DW. I have it up here on the screen. I live in Kentucky, and my name is Daryl Wayne Hunter. So Daryl Wayne, DW, that's a good Kentucky name. My sister's Donna Jean. We call her DJ. We're pretty creative. I'm here in Kentucky. I've been in technology most of my career, but not all of my career. So I started out early as a young adult in logistics, doing production control and inventory control, and that was fun and exciting. I got to travel the world doing some cool things. I went to college at Purdue University up in Indiana, and I studied telecommunications. So I'm a classically trained telecom telephony engineer. I went from undergrad to grad school to a different grad school. I spent 10 years doing nonprofit full-time vocational ministry. So it's pretty fun kind of balancing tech and faith. And I did that for about 10 years and I loved it. And it was super cool and very high tech, more high tech than you might imagine in a nonprofit. And then I went full-time into consulting and really like doubled down on how to be a technologist. So route switch is my first love. So routing packets and switching packets to the moon. And then I started focusing almost exclusively on telephony probably 20 years ago. So I've been around. I've been in a partner ecosystem. I was at a manufacturer named AudioCodes for a little while, based in Israel. I've been an ISV and a VAR. I've been a customer. And I joined Microsoft about 3.5 years ago. We did this really cool program at the time. It was called Teams Meeting Rangers. So the concept of Rangers is not new to Microsoft. We've done that for years. But the Teams Meeting Rangers was a small incubation team that was put together to accelerate the value of Microsoft Teams meetings and calling and devices. And I'm a Ranger. So they hired me for that. And I've stayed. And so the Rangers program graduated into a more formal role inside Microsoft, focused on converged communications on the customer success side. So post-revenue, more around customer adoption and customer sentiment. And that's what I do today. I sit in customer success. My role specifically, I'm a senior program manager. That's a fancy title. But what that really means is that I have worldwide visibility into all the great things that we do around converged communications. My expertise here is calling, meeting, and devices. I have a large lab around me that you can't see. You see my instruments, but there's a lot of devices around me. So I spend a lot of time with one foot in engineering, understanding what we're building and how that works. And I send the other foot directly customer facing, helping our customers unblock, helping our customers accelerate that time to value for the products that they've already bought. Since you own it, I'd love to watch you use it. So that's what I do.
love that. I love your background. Good for me to get your background because there's not when you transition to more of an IT role. So we're telecom guys. Brandon and I, built a CLEC, a 360 Networks, 36 state CLEC, sold it off to Zayo, that sort of thing. Did wholesale in that space. So the carrier infrastructure, we understand the carrier infrastructure from the ground up, right? What's interesting about your background to me is that when we work with IT admins, when we work with teams leaders, when we work with organizations that are migrating teams, you don't typically get the classically trained telco person that's also doing this, right? So you typically get someone who's been the IT guy and who's now taking this on, didn't want it to begin with, doesn't want it, okay? Because real-time communications is daunting if you don't do it, right? If you haven't grown up in this space and you're desktop support or you're doing some stuff in the business, everything is critical, I'm sure, but real-time communications is that thing that is noticed instantly from leadership and like, oh, why doesn't this work? And so when we get to work with someone like you who has, classic telco experience and then all the Microsoft Teams sort of, indulgence, you get to go and you go, and then the customer facing piece on top of that, then you get to go, I can see how we can build real value for organizations. I can see how I can deliver value by creating something that is on the Microsoft platform, and then I can tie it into a real business, and which is why we're here today, a real business case, right? Which is why we're here, because you did a blog a couple of weeks ago, I think it was on shared calling, kind of how the shared calling service works, and it's interesting. I actually had a discussion with another Microsoft person a couple of days ago. And what I thought was pretty interesting was he encouraged us to go, hey, if there's a customer that's on the fence, and we run with plenty of, we're always, we've got a massive, kind of funnel, if you will, of people that are moving to Microsoft Teams that we help. But what I thought was interesting is from a legacy PBX perspective, I thought that this was an interesting approach, applying shared calling to as many people as you can to get them familiar with calling. And I thought, wow, I didn't even from an approach perspective, Brandon, I came to Brandon, I said, I hadn't even thought of that. Like let's just put shared calling on people, give them the ability to dial outbound, and just let them give it a run, see how it works. So I thought that was a pretty interesting perspective. Daryl, what are some of the cool things that you see every day? I mean, I'm sure, you know, I'm a business owner kind of a guy, so I kind of geek out on the productivity stuff.
Yeah.
What are some cool things that you've seen kind of deployed in your time as in your role?
Oh man, we've seen a lot of really great things. Like I will camp out on shared calling briefly, and then let's pivot.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't want to overstate or understate shared calling. So what Microsoft calls shared calling is the ability to make and receive phone calls without a dedicated phone number. For those of us that have done PBX administration and phone system migrations over the years, this is every single PBX migration you've ever done ever in your entire career. You have something old or current, ShoreTel, Mitel, Avaya, Cisco, Picatel, I don't care. They have this thing. And now we're talking about Microsoft Teams. How do you get from here to here faster? So if you think of phone system migrations in your career, those of you on this that are watching this stream, you typically plug something new in. You started working on the configuration and you turn it on. And you might have a butt set or a phone sitting somewhere on a desk, and you plug it in and you make and receive a phone call. You weren't thinking about DIDs or DDIs. You weren't thinking about direct inward private numbers or fancy features. You just wanted dial tone to work. Kind of like when you walk over to your house and you turn on your faucet, you expect water to come out. It's the same concept with PBX administration. When it lights up and you get blinky lights and you pick up a headset and you get dial tone, you expect to be able to make phone calls. That's what shared calling is. Shared calling is the Microsoft methodology to turn on calling for everyone right now, immediately, massive time to value, and then come back and do that site by site, department by department, OU by OU, country by country phone migration. Because here's the deal, phone migrations are hard, right? It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of discovery to understand what you have. And if you are a company or a consultant that knows everything about your phone system, awesome. That's rare, very, very rare, right? To understand what phone devices exist, what numbers exist, what configuration exists per country or per organization is rare. And so the ability to turn on Teams Phone for all of your employees where you own it, whether it's F SKUs or E5 bundle SKUs or Teams Phone standalone or devices, like shared device licenses or rooms, to turn on dial tone for everyone immediately, you can do that with shared calling.
How
And then
exciting is that?
God,
That's
to
exciting.
do
That's
the
exciting.
DID stuff. Yeah, for sure.
Sorry, that's exciting because the big holdup, take hospitals or big medical facilities or banking institutions, right? Everyone's wondering, how do I do this pivot? How do I do this pivot? How do I do this flip? How do I go from this to this? Like, how do I do that and without disrupting business? Right?
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, this is beautiful. This is the easiest way you could migrate ever in the world when it comes to phone system conversions, right? It is. Turn it on, let people start dialing outbound.
Absolutely. Turn the water on, right? Get yourself a drink of water. And I think this is the part that I know we're recording and I know we're live, but like Microsoft did this, right? We had the Skype for Business product. We had the Lync server product. We've had telco for, oh my gosh, 15 years, right? If not more. We've had the ability to have PBX, dial tone, PSTN calling for a long time. It just happened to be that with Microsoft Teams, we had some challenges by providing this shared infrastructure for PBX calling until very recently, the last 6 months, for this thing called shared calling. So as I'm working with customers, this is where it gets super exciting. Watching the aha moments, right?
Yeah.
Working with healthcare, working with manufacturing, education, frontline workers, where they're like, I have these plastic phones on my desk. I have blinky lights. I do not want to manage a complicated direct inward dial infrastructure. I just want them to pick up the phone for emergency calling or to do the outbound calling that they need to do, but then be able to receive calls through maybe an auto attendant or group-based pickup or call queue or whatever. We can do that. It is called shared calling. But the good news is I can also work with the technical business owners and the phone system owners within that organization and say, if you want to move all of your knowledge workers over to Teams, great. But you don't have to wait to get all your discovery done. Turn it on. And then as you discover your site by site, OU, department by department, then you can do the management by exception. It's it's a different methodology. It's a faster time to value for what the customers already own, for sure.
That's the important piece, right? Is like the success of migrating. I think when you measure any project, you look at it and go, what's the probability of my success, and how quickly can I reach that success point?
Yeah.
Right. And what's the criteria where I would call this a success? You've essentially accelerated that by I mean, just by a ton of time. Like if you look at a traditional rollout, and let's just say you're rolling out 1,000 users. Okay, you got 1,000 users. That kind of rollout. If you go, okay, let me build a system, you can still build it concurrently, you run it concurrently and all that good stuff. But you're not using it, you haven't trained on it yet. So now you go train on it, and then you port the numbers over. You're in a traditional phone sense migration, you're looking 30 to 45 days where people are comfortable with it, even longer. Right. So you look at that, and if you're multi-site or complex in, let's say, a healthcare organization, those sorts of things, that's a 6-month adoption period. That's a 6-month rollout. That's even longer sometimes.
Yeah.
You've essentially accelerated that again, like by 50 or 60 or 70% by just getting, here you go. You can just turn it on, start dialing, off you go. Now let's go department by department and get your inbound service working. So
yeah, for sure. And I'm gonna say a couple more things. Brandon, you go first, and I have a couple more things.
Yeah, I was going to say, and let's not discount the fact that from a Microsoft phone system perspective, and this is a conversation Rick and I have had with other Microsoft guys over and over again about the one thing that I don't, I like how you said it, Daryl, this aha moment for the customer that's exploring the opportunity of, I want to go to the new thing. And, sometimes that conversation is, okay, I got to figure out my dial plan and the whole, like you said, the whole PBX configuration. And with Microsoft, that aha moment is, especially if they're already using Teams for collaboration, is that stuff, the PBX functionality is out of the box native. It just works. There's no setup required. There's no, is your user there? Can he call his coworker sitting next to him or across the hall? That piece, like when I've talked to customers, when I explain that, like, you're already using Teams Phone for a PBX. You're just not thinking about it like that. Right? You're seeing it as your collaboration tool, but guess what? That is your PBX now. And now all you've got to do is attach your PSTN service, whether it's shared calling or further down the road when you go to your dedicated, inward dial solution. So like that to me is like the thing that I think us that have been in the Microsoft ecosystem long enough, we kind of forget about that piece because it's just like, duh, we know it's there. Not all customers know that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think you nailed something really important. For customers that are already using Teams, they're already using Teams Phone. They may not think they're using Teams Phone because they may not have plastic phones on desk. They may not be calling customers. They may not be doing inward dial or ordering pizza or whatever it might be. But they have the ability for a two-way audio immediately. And so being able to quickly add PSTN connectivity at one way or the other is really great. And so a couple things I want to say about that I think are important. We at Microsoft are fixing a little bit about the way we talk about shared calling. Like traditionally, even at Microsoft, we talk about the site-by-site. We talk about a proof of concept and a pilot and then site-by-site migration because that's just how we build things. And that's how you've built things as a consultant, as a service provider. That's just what you do. So we're having to kind of flip the conversation with shared calling. Why not use an Entra group or Azure AD group? It's hard for me to say Entra sometimes, but use an Azure AD group, an Entra group, right? Call it branch 1. I live in Louisville. I'll build a Louisville group. I set up all of the plumbing for shared calling. I do group-based assignment of that policy. And then as I onboard new people to Louisville, I drop them in a group and the magic happens. They're automatically enabled for this outbound calling. They're automatically enabled for maybe a caller ID policy, or automatically enabled for a call park policy, or automatically enabled for maybe an emergency calling policy in case something bad happens, right? Rather than trying to do a complicated scripting setup or build this complicated thing, use what your Microsoft 365 software gives you. Through your licensing out of the box, you have groups. Through your licensing out of the box, you have the ability to assign team services to groups. So build your PSTN plumbing through Microsoft first-party pay-as-you-go or Operator Connect partners like G12 or direct routing. If you want to bring your own carrier, get your PSTN plumbing hooked up, turn on the water, and then build automation day one. Don't don't site by site it. Build the default automation right now.
Yeah. Has it changed the way that you guys, obviously, I mean, it's this shared calling the last 6 months or so it's been, right? Has it changed the way Microsoft as an organization starts to talk to customers that come to Microsoft and say, hey, this is how you do it? Has it changed the deployment? Because there's thousands of Microsoft partners out there that, do phone system deployments the same way that they've always done phone system deployments, the same way that they did maybe a Cisco phone system deployment back in the day when they were all Cisco, and now they've converted to Teams, right? And this seems to have, it's flipped the script now, right? And are you guys chatting up this sort of new way? I mean, I heard it from Microsoft, right? That's where I got this from. And this was like, and we're in this space, and it was like a week ago, I think, that I latched onto this. I'm like, wow, holy cow, this could change the way we do things.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm just going to be very open and transparent. I'm a technical person. I talk all day, every day about the nuances of technical deployments and bits and bytes and wires and Intune policies and device deployment strategy. So as I started approaching this, I just did what's comfortable, right? I talk about the technology, and let's talk about proof of concept and pilot. And I've been really challenged by some colleagues on the inside our customer success organization. I mentioned I live in customer success, right? One of the roles that's customer facing, we call it the converged communication customer success manager role. They're customer facing, they're technical experts, they're walking customers through adopting our technology. I'm gonna shout out 2 names, whether they're listening or not, who knows? Matt Edelhuber is one of them. He sits in our health and life sciences area. And Aaron Nolan, who sits in our RCG, our retail group. We're in a small internal V team, and we are building a playbook to kind of help have this conversation. And when we're ready for it and we get through all the approvals, we're going to publish it for everybody in the world. It's going to sit on Teams Academy, aka.ms/Teams Academy. That is the place to go for IT pros like you. And we put all of our nuts and bolts of how we do our things there. We built playbooks. We're building a chapter, at least, if not a full playbook, around shared calling. And just yesterday, Thursday, we're recording this on Friday, March the 1st. Just yesterday, on Thursday, February 29th, that's weird to say, we were talking about the playbook and going through the traditional chapter of proof of concept, pilot, and Aaron, in the middle of our call, asked an excellent, challenging conversation. Hey guys, are we doing it wrong? Shouldn't we be talking about like using groups and doing automation now? I mean, that's our talk track. That's what we're talking to customers about. Turn it on now. Why are we not building the playbook to turn it on now and then offer the 1-by-1, site-by-site proof of concept in like an appendix? And we all just kind of stopped and like blinked, and we're like, yeah. So I'm just being very transparent. We're evolving some of our pitch, but we're evolving our point of view about what is the right way to talk to customers about this thing that I think is not new, but it is new.
Yeah.
You know what I like about that approach? Yeah, what I like about that approach is it's actually bringing identity back to the front, right? An identity-based solution versus the legacy mindset of how do we split this up and logically make it, route and do the things we want it to do. Instead, you're focused on your identity and tying the policies and logic to that identity. And ultimately that should be, as we move into this more, I'll call it automated business process where communication is just another channel, whether it's PSTN enabled or not. It's just another channel in this business automation flow. And ultimately, at the end of the day, that identity is what drives the policies that determine what needs to happen in the automation flow. So I actually love that approach when you think about it from a more holistic picture.
Yep. I'm excited about it. I think I need to take off because I need to go have a discussion with our service delivery team now and go, here's a whole new way on how to go do service delivery. No, but seriously, I can tell you that I can name 2 or 3 very, very large customers who we're working with today that are in the process of breaking down department by department so they can go, okay, here's the right information for us. Now let's go deploy, versus, hey, we're just going to turn you on. We're just going to turn you on right now. We're in shared calling. There's a few carriers that are in shared calling today. I think you can identify if you've got shared calling available today. And so it's like we can just go turn it on for people and get them rolling. Yeah. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, indeed. And the last thing I'm going to say, and then we can change topics if you want, because I never answered your first question. I just kind of camped out of shared calling. But for those of you listening at home that, especially if you're here in the States, that you might be thinking about things like Ray Baum's Act or Kerry's Law, or, hey, Daryl, you said that I can turn on calling, but I don't have to have a direct inward dial number. How does this call into play for like emergency calling? You know, if something happens and I want to make sure that my emergency call routes properly. The good news is it's baked into the product from day one. So to create your shared calling policy, it requires you inside Microsoft Teams Phone to do things like location IDs, to make sure when you call 911 that all the right location information goes to the right public safety people so they can, you know, roll public safety to help you. So yes, I'm talking about not having a dedicated phone number, but the service allows for proper identification in case of emergency to make sure that safety comes to you. And if for whatever reason the call is disconnected, they have the ability to call you back directly. You don't have a direct number, but in an emergency situation, there's some glue in the plumbing that can connect public safety directly to you. So just know that. So don't let emergency services be a thing in the back of your head. Shared calling addresses that need as well.
Man, that's fantastic. That's a massive win. I mean, it's just a massive win. That's amazing.
It is.
All right. Whew.
The other question you asked me that I didn't answer. Do you want to go back to that? You asked me.
Oh, let's do it. Yep.
So I feel like I'm talking a lot. Hi guys.
I love it. Let's go. I like done. Put it
That's
all
why
on
you're
us there. Put it all on us.
It's not the Daryl show. So my expertise is calling, meeting, and devices. So one of my favorite things to do is to work with customers that are considering phones, plastic phones on desks, or considering room systems like Teams Room on Android or Teams Room on Windows, or even like displays, you know, being able to have a more modern, dedicated one-touch device to join your meetings. So I'm going to do a little flippy with the camera, but like the reason if the camera works, nope, it doesn't. It's part of the streaming technology. I have a whole lab over here that's got about 10 Teams rooms for Windows. And I don't know for sure this technology, if I can change my camera. I'm going to try it and we'll see what happens.
Let's see.
Nope, it's not going to let me. That's okay. I'll go right back to my regular camera. But I have a bunch of Team Room for Windows, a bunch of Team Room for Android over here. And then over here, I've got a bunch of personal devices, Surface Hubs and displays and Teams Rooms and phones.
Look at that.
Stuff right next to me. And the reason I like to talk about devices, well, what I'm a nerd, and I love hardware, but I think it's good to help customers understand how to consume Microsoft Teams. Brandon, you nailed it. Customers that use Teams have Teams Phone. They make calls. They may not think about it, but they have the ability. But what if I needed to have a touchdown space? Maybe I'm starting a return to office outreach with my organization, and I may not want to have dedicated offices again, or maybe I've gotten rid of 5 floors in my building and now I only have 2 floors, you know, for the people that are coming in from time to time. That's where these devices like displays, like maybe a Neat Frame or a Lenovo ThinkSmart U Plus or a Yealink A20 come in awesome. I can sit down. I can have all of my dedicated meetings. I have my chat on the touchscreen. I can plug in a USB cable to my laptop and now I have a second screen, right? The ecosystem that we're building around customer need and customer demand gets me super stoked. So can I talk telephony? Sure.
Oh,
but I'd rather you use it. So let's talk about how you're going to use and consume the product. And those are some of the cool stories that I really enjoy. Like, you know, having touchscreen displays like Surface Hub. I just moved my Surface Hub to Teams Room for Windows yesterday. So just in the process of learning about what we do in technology and then connecting that to customer needs. I'm not in sales, right? But even if I was in sales, I just want to sell you a widget. I want to make sure I know what keeps you up at night. What are you trying to accomplish as an organization? And what do we have that overlays? So devices is what's the most exciting to me.
That's pretty cool because, you know, people don't think about devices all that often. They think about a headset, right? If we have a customer that goes out and it's like the first thing is, okay, we've got to address we used to have phones on our desks. Now we don't have phones on our desks. That's the first thing they think about. But some of the devices you're talking about, like the Neat Frame and even the A20 from Yealink, those sorts of things. Oh, there it is.
There it is.
Look,
yeah. So that over there is just nothing but meeting rooms and nothing but conference rooms and shared spaces. So working with customers on how they want to consume those shared we spaces, not just the me personal space. So sorry to
Right,
interrupt you.
right. No, that's great. That's exactly what, you look at it, and that sometimes that comes second to moving the phone system over, but the devices are how people consume the service typically, right? And you look at, we've run into, take retail as an example, where frontline workers are now starting to be addressed really well, but with the new licensing. But an organization that had, I don't know, they had 800 locations, whatever it was, something like that. But they looked at it and said, well, we don't have PCs at every one of our stations. So it's like, I'm like, what PCs? I mean, we'll just stick a regular phone on your desk. Like, what kind of phone are you looking for? What kind of phone do you have now? But it's how, there you go. It's how people still consume to some degree, right? There's a lot of organizations trying to get away from the desktop stuff in favor of, let's outfit the rooms. Let's put community spaces up. Let's do those sorts of engagement sort of areas. And so that's awesome that you get to, firsthand view of and touch of all the different components, and you get to bring that to life to the organizations that you end up talking to and solve real life solutions that they're going through. Right. That's cool stuff. Brandon, what do you got, buddy?
Yeah. I mean, piling on to the device thing, anymore, it's like when Teams phone first came around, it seemed like kind of a lot of the chatter was just around that core functionality. But now it seems like we get on these customer calls and the need is more around, yeah, we get phone, but I think it more and more is around the devices, whether it's Teams rooms or conference rooms or whatever. But even it I don't know why it surprises me, but it's like every time it seems like there's always a conversation around door actuators and overhead paging, and that seems to be just the new normal. And obviously Microsoft has created, I'll call it access avenues for us to be able to come in and solution even those kind of devices into the ecosystem.
Do you think it's because the customer is changing? And I say that because, if you thought about Link back in the day, Daryl, and you went through, some of the OCS stuff, it was real knowledge workers. It was real, desktop on my soft phone, sort of thing, right? And nowadays, I think Teams has become so mainstream. It's every business, not just guys that have a knowledge worker base of employees, but it's every business that has, a facility, no facilities, half knowledge workers, some remote, some in office. It's like everybody, in my opinion. And even I had a discussion with somebody, even the small business. I mean, we have customers that come to us and they say, hey, will you guys help us with 20 users, and something like that. And it's like, so it is like every nook and cranny of the business world now is being addressed. And it seems to me like that's the reason you're seeing so much of that, ancillary sort of services attached to Microsoft Teams is because the customers every customer wants it. It's no longer just your global 500 that are all knowledge workers, right? It is now every business that could, say for the tire store. And I say that there may be a tire store on Microsoft Teams at this point, but I think is that, you think that's why you're seeing the adoption of all the different devices into Microsoft Teams, or the requirement for that?
I don't know. I think it's been there. It's definitely accelerated in the last few years, at the risk of being the trite guy who says the obvious. The whole world changed. We used to fight with business owners and process owners for the ability to work from home and to have flexible work schedules. And the answer is always like, oh, productivity will decrease, or I can't run my business, or we won't be able to sell widgets. And then all of a sudden, everyone went home and people were successful, and it changed. There was some fundamental change that happened. And so what that also means is, like Alberto said it really well in the comments, right? So video may have killed the radio star, but like the soft phone didn't yet kill the hard phone star, right? So it's true. Like, even though I now have a soft phone and I was able to take my phone home, I've worked from home for 15 years, but if I hadn't, if my working from home was new, 3 or 4 years ago, it was a fundamental shift in our industry. It was disruptive, and every vendor had to immediately pour R&D dollars in, right? It wasn't just Microsoft. It was Zoom. It was Cisco. It was 8x8. It was Ring Central. It was everybody heavily invested in what does it take to now consider this new normal of business productivity. So the services, so the Zoom service, the Cisco WebEx service, the Microsoft Teams service, like significant amounts of like R&D and service change day over day, week over week. Devices have always had a demand in devices, but I don't want to speak out of turn, but like it used to be, oh, that video device, that's on the 8th floor, right? You go to the 8th floor, that's where the device is. It's used 1% of the time for maybe a board meeting or that one vendor who needs to have 10 people in the room, as compared to go a device on the wall, right?
Yeah.
And this may be totally wrong, but like I have kids at home, and like education has driven a ton of this as well. Walking into my children's classroom now and having everything electronic, and oh, that's okay if the kid can't be there, I can still teach them remotely, or maybe I want to bring in an expert to teach the kids about some math concept or science concept, and now I can do that. Where was that when we were kids?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So like I think the world is small. And so now having a device standpoint for rooms and meetings that can now truly show us a worldwide point of view. But for me as an individual knowledge worker, I demand flexibility.
Yeah.
Right? I want to be able to work where I want to work, not in an aggressive way, but I want that flexibility. And our product group, they're great. They're listening. We are actively working with customers to understand what works well and what doesn't. And I've had the privilege to attend silently with my camera and microphone off just to listen to some of those conversations, because it's really valuable to hear how our product group is really wanting to learn the customer point of view and build what they need. So was there an actual thing that tipped it? I don't know. Was it COVID? I don't know. There is a shift. There is a shift to become more device centric. And I think, and I know I work for Microsoft, but I have very good friends at Zoom and at Cisco as well. But the idea of having this ecosystem platform to allow us to work where we want to work and be just as productive, I'm never going to go back.
No. I'm gonna. There's a few things I want to address in there. You said ecosystem, and I'm going to get to that. Brandon, remind me to get to the ecosystem piece in a moment. But there's a couple of things. If Jimmy Vaughn is listening, Jimmy Vaughn, I'm sure is like throwing a hands up or two, because you're like device rooms. Jimmy Vaughn's like going, yeah. He's looking for the shout out button, I'm sure. So
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Staying quiet because he's like, I am not getting dragged back onto the show.
Yeah, I've not spoken to Jimmy in like 2 whole weeks.
2 whole weeks. He was on this morning selling Teams Room phones, Teams Room stuff.
Friday.
Exactly. And then let me get to the ecosystem piece of it, because I think that's interesting what you talk about. We end up having this discussion quite a bit. As exciting as the communication, as the platform is, as exciting as the devices are, the ecosystem that is the Microsoft entirety of their portfolio, right, to us gets really, really exciting, because again, you start there they go, the hands up. That was Jimmy right there. You start to see some of the tools that you can use with the phone system, with our chat, with our video, whether it's ACS or Power Automate and those sorts of things. You start to see the components of the greater ecosystem. I wouldn't even, is the greater ecosystem of Microsoft called a platform, or is it Teams is the platform and the other things are just ecosystem components? I'm not sure how you'd categorize that, but Power Automate, like we get excited about Power Automate because you look at what you can do for an organization, and even tied into mobile, even tied into shared calling or into a phone system. There are cool things that you can do, not just for the sake of doing them though, but to address something in a business. And Brandon, I think you've got an example of, some sort of a voicemail sort of addressing, in a shared calling environment. And it's because we had an organization that literally, ready for this? This is the weirdest sort of call flow, but we had a customer that took grocery store orders over voicemail. Okay. So they were a grocery store, and I should say wholesale grocery store. And if you could imagine a restaurant going, I need 18 heads of lettuce, I need 75 tomatoes, I need, 77 avocados, and they're like, they literally leave a voicemail for this organization, and this organization then fulfills that. But it was going to a group of people, and they didn't know who was fulfilling it, who wasn't fulfilling it, those sorts of things. Brandon creates a solution for it. And it's a combination of Power Automate, shared calling. Brandon, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool, and I also wanna highlight Copilot as I talk about this because,
That's
you know,
that's a
I
whole
used
that's a whole
Copilot
show.
I used Copilot to kinda and yeah, it'd take, probably another 30 minutes to go through all of it, but, so yeah, that's the use case, right? You got a customer who is receiving a voicemail to a group the way Microsoft does it, distribution list via, the email voicemail delivered to email. It's distributed out to individual emails. Each person gets the voicemail, and there's this collaboration that needs to occur about, hey, Rick, did you handle that? Daryl, did you handle that? Do I need to handle that? And there's all of this chatter that needs to happen around that. And so we kind of got to thinking about it. We're like, why not take Power Automate, create an adaptive card that requires user feedback? So now the whole group gets this adaptive card with the transcription of the voicemail, who the voicemail's from, and two buttons. One is click to call back, and the other one is to acknowledge that that call has been handled so it can close the card. And now, with two clicks of a button, everyone's in the same channel, team channel. Keep in mind, this is now your phone system we're talking about, automated into your business process, all a part of your collaboration ecosystem, and everybody's watching the activity happen. So now I don't have to collaborate. Hey, Daryl, did you get that? Hey, Rick, did you get that? Do I need to handle that? I'm clicking one button to call the customer back, and I'm handling that, and I'm closing that card out. You obviously could take that so much further with CRM integration or other automation flows you want to tie that whole PSTN flow into if you wanted to. But high level, I mean, that's real world case. And it's, legacy phone people don't think about that, right? The phone system is the phone system, and they don't, the legacy systems, they don't really think about, well, how do I take a voicemail and turn it into a business process? Where Teams has created this tightly integrated ecosystem between all the different, I'll call them power platforms, to allow us to do that with the touch of a few buttons. And then Copilot comes along and just makes it this low code, no code process where now I can go into Copilot and I can literally describe what I want from a flow perspective. It will go build out that Power Automate flow, and you might have to tune it. You might have to coach Copilot a little bit, but I'm telling you, in almost no order, time frame order, I had this thing working, and I didn't touch the actual flow configuration to try to figure out what components I needed. Copilot did the entire thing for me. So it was pretty
Wow.
stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Daryl, what do you see? I mean, from an ecosystem, when you're building out phone systems and you're working with customers, what do you see as one of the most common sort of ecosystem components that you end up having customers pull in?
There's a couple things along the way. I really like your voicemail conversation. There's an MVP in the community named Martin who did something similar where he used a naming convention for like an auto attendant in a call queue, maybe one called like on call, I think is his example. That way, when on call gets a voicemail, then an adaptive card would know that it's on call. That way, the flow can capture on call and put it in a channel called on call. So all the flow happens. And it's very similar, I think, to what you described, maybe slightly different. But I think being able to process shared voicemails is really important. We get that feedback from customers a lot. I'm excited to see what we're going to build for that. I think voicemail's good. Beyond actually using the product, let's kind of go back to adopting the product. Being able, and many customers have done this, and other partners have done this, and it sounds like you all at G12 have done this as well. Being able to build an adoption one button to push, right, to turn people on for phone. So picture, if you will, customers that have already gone through shared calling, right? They've turned it on for everybody, and now it's time for them to do their site-by-site, department-by-department migration. So they build their discovery. They might have an Excel spreadsheet that contains, Brandon and Rick and Daryl, and this is where I'm located by location, and this is what my phone number needs to be by location. I can build some automation around that knows I'm in Louisville, so it automatically puts me in the Louisville group. Therefore, I get all the right policies I need. Wouldn't it be great if there was a way to click that one button? There's a specific partner I'm thinking of in the Nordics that has built this for some very large customers that have been able to capture some automation to help onboard country by country. Because if we're going to consider things like caller ID policies, if we're going to consider things like shared calling policies, then we have to have a component that can identify Norway from Sweden, from Austria, from France, from Germany, from Louisville, Kentucky, right? From Denver, Colorado. That way we have the ability to have emergency services work properly. So the things that I get from customers is hey, Daryl, this technology is great. Now, how do I consume it? How do I consume it quickly? How do I get the value out of what I bought so I can continue to use it? Because if I don't get value out of it, why would I want to have it anyway? Right?
Yep.
So those are the conversations I get. How do I get value quickly? So onboarding automation, for sure. Offboarding automation. What does that look like? Maybe for seasonal workers. Maybe that's retail, or maybe some other thing like financial services. How do I handle seasonality in my workforce? So having any sort of group-based automation, or maybe an Azure runbook. I'll give you another specific example. This was built by one of my CSA engineering friends maybe a year ago now. His name's Tommy. He was given a question from a customer. That customer needed the ability to change the voicemail greeting in case of snow. And so at the time, we did not have the ability to delegate the after hours message center or message recordings, right? It had to be done by an admin. We have that ability now, but we didn't at the time. So we built this whole cool process with a form and an Azure runbook running as a Teams admin. So they authenticated, they had to be a part of a certain group. And if they are part of a certain group, they could change the message. Like, hey, there's snow today, we're gonna open at 3 p.m. Click the button, security processes take precedence. Yes, you're allowed to change that process. Run the runbook, change the message, change the greeting, re-recording. That's pretty amazing.
Awesome.
How creative some of our people are, how some of our partners are when customers say, I love this, but what about that? Those are not bad questions. Those are really good questions.
That it does come down to there's creativity, like the creativity in how you deploy services. It's one of the things that I think sets organizations and partners apart is that creativity. I mean, you can go deploy a phone system the same old way you've deployed a phone system for the last 20 years, right? Or you can really start to look at the business process and go, I've got a lot more tools at my disposal now, right? I've got a greater ecosystem. I've got automation. I've got a lot of tools. What can I help your business with, right? And that's what gets really exciting. Again, as a business owner kind of a person, I go, man, how do I help? How do I gain productivity? How do I do things faster? How do I get more with less, right? How do I produce more with less? And those are those are core at every business, right? When you're scaling, when you're profitable, when you're not profitable, you're trying to do a lot of these things. And that is where a partner comes in and really starts to be creative in how they address business problems. The solution isn't just a technical solution; it's a business solution, and that's why we sort of fell in love with the Teams phone solution or the Teams ecosystem solution. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So
I will share a couple things just to make sure that you're aware of them. Today is March 1st, which means that we just published our What's New in Teams for February. At the end of every month, we publish a new thing on the tech community. So February is over. We're now in March, long live February. But when it comes to Teams Phone, we did make an announcement. It's on the blog. You can read about it. Private line is out there. So administrators can enable a private second phone number for a user. This was very common in every PBX deployment in the history of the world, right? I have my phone number that's on my business card that you can call me at, that I might click a button to make go to voicemail. But then I'm going to give maybe my best friends my private number that comes directly to me, that may not have delegation. It may not go to my executive assistant or whatever that might be. So this is something we had in Skype for Business and something we had in Lync. We didn't have it in Teams until now. So that's new. One more thing that I think is really good to kind of call out here. You mentioned it briefly, but not by name. Door phones, or maybe some of those interoperability solutions that you can use with Teams Phone. That's the SIP gateway. There's an interoperability gateway, a gateway in the cloud, air quotes, that's been built. It's a service that you can bring in qualified devices to be proxied into the Microsoft Teams ecosystem. So whether that's an older phone like a Cisco 8861 I have down here, so maybe I'm moving from Cisco to Microsoft Teams, I don't want to buy all new plastic phones, I can redeploy that same Cisco phone and become a Microsoft Teams phone. Or maybe it's an Algo door phone. I was working with a nonprofit customer in Indiana the other day, just in Discord. We were talking about a technical issue. They turned off their PBX, and a few days later, their shipping department was like, hey, how come our door intercom doesn't work?
Whoops.
Yeah, that's right. We have a door intercom, and this guy is hilarious and awesome. He's like, what do I do about that? I'm like, hey, good news. We have a great partner. We have several partners, but if you look at our SIP Gateway playbook and enablement guide, we list out some partners and actually step-by-steps of how to get them up and running. So you can have an intercom or maybe a strobe in your warehouse or some loud external ringer or whatever that might look like, DECT phone, Wi-Fi phone. So I think from Teams Phone as a Teams as a platform, yes, you can build crazy extensibility inside Teams. But Teams Phone has our native service, but we do have an interoperability gateway. So you do have the ability to transition into Microsoft Teams analog lines, for example. You're never going to get rid of analog lines. So having that ability to do that is really, really key. It's not native, but it's in Teams. So
I'm going to shout out at the analog line stuff because the SIP Gateway team at Microsoft, I'm going to give you guys a quick little story. There was we're working on a, I don't know, 10,000 user deal, something like that. Right. And they've got 900 analog devices, something like that. Oh, it's a massive amount of analog devices, right, at every location. And they're coming from a Cisco Call Manager Cube environment. And you look at that and you go, okay, not only did the gateway team go, okay, well, they're not certified devices. Cisco's not a certified device. The analog devices. So if you think about the VGs as an example, not certified. However, we'll help you connect them. We'll help you connect all those analog devices because the customer didn't want to go replace all those devices. We offered to replace all the devices for them. Like, no, don't want to make any changes. Don't have the bandwidth. We just want to make those work. And whether that meant initially leaving a cube in place and grooming all those analog devices off the call manager and grooming them onto the cube. That was the initial path. And then the second path was Microsoft raising their hand going, you know what, we could probably make those things work with our SIP gateway. Let's go figure that out with you. And I'm just like, that's a massive shout out to the team there on the SIP Gateway team, because it's what helps us win organizations that are, again, that's, if you think about that, that's like 1,000 analog lines sitting out there that, need to be addressed in order for them to move, to the Microsoft Teams environment. They need to feel comfortable about what that solution looks like. And that was something that we all kind of, put our hats on, or thinking hats on, and said, okay, here's how we can address this as a group, and let's go do this. And so that was awesome. So SIP Gateway,
that's incredible. The feature PM for SIP Gateway attended a call that I hosted this week. There's a small internal technical community that 3 or 4 of us kind of help facilitate the conversation, and great speakers and all that kind of stuff. And the feature PM for SIP Gateway joined our call to share a little bit about what he's building, but more importantly, to hear from our technical subject matter experts, like, how can we do more? How can we get more sticky? Where are some customer scenarios where we're failing? And analog always comes up. And I know we're recording this. Analog is the least sexy technology in the world, but it's fundamental. If we're going to talk about flipping the faucet and getting water, you're going to have blue lights. You're going to have phones on poles. You're going to have that. So we have to address it. So it's not just analog in the SIP Gateway, but analog in the SIP Gateway is amazing.
It is. And there's a whole slew of it. Brandon has a Cisco back there where he configured in 3 different clicks, and he was off and running with a Cisco phone. But the analog was, it is my favorite, because it is something that, there you go. And it's something that needs to be addressed in nearly every business. So it's awesome to see how we address the different things, how Microsoft addresses the different things. And then us as partners we get to work directly with Microsoft to go figure out how we deploy to the customer and make them feel really good. Okay. Brandon, what do you got about that? Shaking your head in concurrence?
That's a mouthful. It's actually making me think about a solution I'm working on right now. I'm not going to talk about it on this call, but it's like it never ceases to amaze me how even in the unknown, like I'm actually, Rick knows about this. I'm working on this one solution right now that's really, really interesting, really sticky. But it's never ceased to amaze me when I run into these challenges where we're doing solution design with the customer. We find a way with Microsoft. Even if it's not obvious, we find a way with Microsoft. And it just takes that thinking outside the box and looking at things differently, and being willing to, be challenged by, like you were talking about earlier with this whole, are we doing it the right way from maybe a shared calling perspective, or taking that approach and going, hey, customer, I know this probably makes no sense, but hear me out. And so like the SIP gateway has saved us. And when I say saved us, like we've had multiple customers that have told us this has to work or we're walking. And so SIP gateway has saved us from a ton of customers just saying, never mind, we're going to stay on Cisco. So yeah, to echo you, Rick, big shout out to that SIP gateway team for.
Yeah. I feel like that was a harken back to the where's Microsoft finds a way. I feel like that was a Jurassic Park moment, life finds a way type of thing.
Yeah. One thing I'm going to say just for the recording and for those that might be listening at home, if you're an IT pro, I mentioned it earlier, but I'm going to say it again out loud. aka.ms/Teams Academy. It is our technical training site that's public for IT pros like you. So it has tons of foundations for IT and AV pros around Rooms, Windows, and Rooms, Android. It has some on-demand training links at the bottom. It has a whole section on technical training to understand like how the sausage is made with Microsoft Teams. Some of it's dated, it's true. Some of it's years out of date, and we have active ways to try to fix that. But there's 3 main things on there that I want to draw your attention to. There's a Teams phone deployment playbook, a full well-built deck. Mary Beth is paying attention. Oh my gosh. Hi, Mary Beth. We're on the same team. We're on the exact same team in New York. Hi, Mary Beth.
She's coming on the show soon.
Nice. It'd be awesome. So the Teams phone deployment playbook is amazing. There's a Teams devices deployment playbook. That's all about the fancy devices that I care about. And there's also a SIP gateway enablement and migration playbook for these scenarios that might be a DECT phone or an analog ATA or whatever. Our Teams engineering group has built and maintained these decks that would be great for partners like you, but also great for all the customers that might be listening. And oh my gosh, now that I know that Mary Beth's listening, I might have to clean something up later. We'll see. I love it.
Awesome. That's awesome. All right, Brandon, what's the last topic, Brandon? What's the last thing we've got? We've got a couple of minutes. What's the last thing we're covering?
I'd be curious, Daryl, from your perspective. I know it seems like all of the talk in the industry right now is obviously around AI and Copilot. So I'd love to know just your soundbite, right? Your 2-minute soundbite on how you see that shifting and shaping the way that even devices might be handled, or the way that organizations may be using maybe AI as an integration point to do things like, organizing meeting rooms based on attendees and automatically, doing whatever it needs to do to bring more efficiency to the forefront, even from maybe a device perspective.
Yeah, thanks for the question. And I'm going to confess that I am very AI early in my learning, right? I'm very early. There's a couple areas of how I use AI. So when it comes to meetings, I use a speakerphone, and I've never been on a meeting with you all, but those that are on meetings with me, you'll see that I don't take notes. Some of that is I'm neurodiverse and I have a good memory, and I can usually remember most everything that people say. But if I start to write down a note, then I'm going to miss what you say, and I want to hear you, because if I hear you, it's going to go in that brain of mine, and I'm going to remember it. Mary Beth, I'm sure, is laughing right now because she's seen it in action, right? So using things like intelligent recap in a meeting, some of the great things that we're doing inside Copilot for me after the meeting to capture who said what, that type of AI is so valuable for me and my work style. Because I am neurodiverse, sometimes it's hard for me, the term I use, to go from 0 to 1. It's hard for me to break inertia, right? But once I'm at 1, I can go from 1 to 2 to 100 very fast. I can accelerate, but breaking that inertia is hard. So I usually start writing, and I usually start brainstorming in Microsoft Word. Sometimes Notepad. I just start writing in bullet point form, and then from there massage it into something consumable for actual humans, not this robot called Daryl. And so using AI, using Copilot and Microsoft Word, just to be able to like write a prompt that I'm thinking about, and then having it do its thing, and then to get me started, to break inertia, to get me from 0 to 1. Oh my gosh. For someone like me, the way that I think, it's incredible. Talk about devices. We just finished a device. This is all public knowledge. I'm not sharing anything I shouldn't share. This device sitting right here is a Jabra Panacast P50 camera. This particular camera is one of our AI cameras. And so it has the ability, when hooked up to a Teams room, to have a voice profile to hear my voice, sloshy S's and all, but also a video profile with, this ginger beard. And so if I'm in a Teams meeting in a room equipped with that type of artificial intelligence and I start talking, it ascribes me as the transcript. So it's not like conference room A said or attendee 1 said, Daryl Hunter said that thing. That's incredible. That's really incredible to me, especially as I think about how I use transcripts and how important transcripts are to capture details of a meeting, next step items, whatever. Because we might all be in the same table. And how do I know if Rick said that amazing thing, or maybe it was Brandon, right? So being able to know what that is by person, that's really cool.
Do you have to have
I might work with management? I don't know. I don't have a point of view on that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you have to have is it identity? Is it identity? Is it not identity? It's in the team settings, isn't it? Last thing at the very bottom.
It's a profile. So inside Microsoft Teams client, you go to settings here. I'll try to see if I can look at it now. You go into settings and it's towards the very bottom of calls.
It's like identity or I forget what it's called. Like
it's not there anymore. It's in settings. Now you're putting me on the spot and I feel like I'm going to miss it. Recognition.
Recognition.
That's it. A voice profile and a face profile. So those profiles are yours. You control it yourself inside your own client. You can ask your IT admin to remove it if that's important to you. Maybe when you leave the company, or maybe you don't want your profile stored anymore. You can ask your admin to remove it. You can remove it yourself as well. So that's end user control. That's
pretty cool. I think that's we've hit top of the hour and then some. Daryl, you've given us a ton to think about. This has been an amazing sort of hour to kind of consume everything that you put out there for us. For the audience, it's massive. Like the stuff that we work really hard to provide some value on this show, right? To like push out good information so people understand what's happening in the Teams ecosystem, the Teams world, and the phone world, and what it is that we do, and what it is that we are really passionate about. So having someone like you come on who's super passionate about this, and is just super smart and neurodiverse, I think that's awesome. So I appreciate you spending the hour with us, Daryl. It's been fantastic. Brandon, what do you got, buddy?
Nope, Daryl, we appreciate it. I'm sure our listeners are. If they didn't take notes, then I guess maybe we'll have to post the video for them to recap on it, because I don't think we have Copilot on this. So no, but Daryl, we appreciate it. And to our listeners and our audience, we appreciate you, and have a happy weekend.
Episode 53. That's a wrap. We'll catch you guys later.
Yeah. Bye, friends.